Contrary to the modern democratic systems, the Spanish colonial government in the Philippines was characterized by a centralized structure with how many branches of government? Let's find out. This report delves into the significant story of Filipino nationalism's birth, exploring the complex interplay of Spanish colonial policies, rigid social hierarchies, and the courageous uprisings that ultimately challenged the empire. From the quiet intellectual rebellion of the Ilustrados and the propaganda movement to the explosive eruption of Katipunan and the cry of Bugadlawin. We'll uncover the seeds of revolution, the internal struggles within the movement, and the brief significant existence of the Malolos Republic, a testament to the Filipinos' unwavering pursuit of freedom. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to describe how Spanish rule shaped Philippine politics, examine rebellions and their role in creating a Filipino national identity, analyze how reformers spread nationalist ideas, and lastly, describe the Katipunan's rise, the cry of Bugadlawin, internal divisions, and the creation of the First Philippine Republic. This lesson covers the Spanish colonial era in the Philippines, including its politics, or the politics in Spanish era, which refers to the governance and administration of the Philippines under Spanish colonial rule during 1521 to 1898. Revolts, or the armed uprisings against Spanish colonial rule seeking independence. The seeds of nationalism, or the ideas and movements that fostered Filipino identity and unity. Ilustrados, or the educated Filipino elite who advocated for reforms during the Spanish era. Propaganda movement, a reform movement during 1880s to 1890s seeking changes through peaceful means. Katipunan, a secret revolutionary society founded by Andres Bonifacio in 1892. Discovery of Katipunan, where the Spanish authorities discovered the Katipunan in 1896, leading to the Philippine Revolution. Cry of Bugadlawin, the symbolic start of the Philippine Revolution in 1896. Division among Katipuneros, or the factions within the Katipunan, led by Bonifacio and Aguinaldo, had differing views on leadership. And the Malolos Republic, the first Philippine Republic established in 1899 under Emilio Aguinaldo's leadership. Before the arrival of Spaniards, the Philippines was inhabited by diverse indigenous groups, each with their own culture, language, and system of governance. These early Filipino engaged in trade with neighboring countries such as China and Malaysia, and had their own system of writing and social hierarchy. The arrival of Spanish conquistador Ferdinand Magellan in 1521 marked the beginning of Spanish colonization. Over the centuries, Spanish imposed its language, culture, and governance, introducing Christianity, mainly Catholicism. The Spanish exploited the Philippines' resources, imposed forced labor, and collected tribute from natives. Despite Spanish rule, Filipino culture and identity persisted. The 19th century saw growing nationalism with the propaganda movement and the Katipunan, leading the charge for reforms and independence. The Philippine Revolution during 1896 to 1898 ultimately led to the Declaration of Independence in 1898. The legacy of pre-colonial Spanish periods continues to shape the Philippines' identity, culture, and history, with the country's rich heritage and resilience remaining a vital part of its story. The pre-colonial government was characterized by independent barangays. The Spaniards consolidated power in these independent barangays under a centralized government. It is important to note that there are only two branches of government, the executive and the judicial. There was no legislature or Congress because the laws for the Philippines were made by the Spaniards in Spain. The highest-ranking ruler during the Spanish rule was the Governor General or Gobernador General, who served as a representative of the King of Spain in the Philippines. As a ruler, he exercised the executive, administrative, legislative, and judicial powers. Executive powers: the Governor General directs government activities in the country. He can also appoint minor officials in the government, including the parish priests. He was also the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Legislative powers: to a certain extent, a Governor-General can make laws himself. He can issue orders with the force of law, which were called superior decrees. On the other hand, decrees or orders coming from the King of Spain were called royal decrees or orders. However, the king bestows the right of compliance to the Governor General. This means that the Governor General can suspend the operation of a royal decree or orders in the Philippines of his opinion. The said order would not be beneficial to the administration of the country. The judicial powers: the Governor General can bring political and administrative cases directly to the audiencia, or the judicial body of the country, for justice to be administered on aggrieved people. The judicial powers of the government were exercised by the audiencia and the lower courts. It is the highest court insofar as civil and criminal cases were concerned and can be related to our Supreme Court in the present. In the absence of governor, or when he could not perform his duties, the audiencia exercised political and administrative powers. It has also audited the finances of the government. Here is a sample photo of the audiencia, which is a royal audience before the most famous pair of joint monarchs in our world, Ferdinand and Isabel of Spain. Now, in terms of local government, under the central government was the provincial government composed of unpacified or military zones, pacified provinces and cities. Unpacified or military zones called corregimiento are places where armed conflicts and resistance of the Filipino to Spanish rule persisted. It was ruled by a military governor called corregidor, who was tasked to lead in suppressing Filipino resistance. Pacified provinces called alcaldia, where provinces in the Philippines where civil unrest and rebellion of Filipinos were addressed. It was governed by a provincial governor called Alcalde Mayor, who was appointed by the Governor General. Under provincial government was the municipal government. The town or municipality called pueblo was composed of several barangays called barrios and was headed by the gobernadorcillo or little governor. Barangay or barrio was governed by the kapitan or cabeza de barangay. The capitans were usually former maharlika or datu, and they were given economic and political privileges. Lastly, cities called ayuntamiento were places transformed into centers of social, commercial, religious, and cultural life. It was composed of 2 alcaldes, or leaders, 12 regidors, or councilors, and a chief of police, a city secretary, and few other lesser officials. The Spaniards implemented policies in the country that were ideally made for governance and regulation without exploiting the Filipinos. However, in practice, these policies were abused by the Spaniards themselves. The Hispanization of names. Governor General Narciso Claveria authored the Catálogo Alfabético de Apellidos, a document that contained Spanish surnames which were given to Hispanize Filipino names in order to make tax collection more efficient. Tributo. It is where the Spaniards collected tribute or taxes in cash or in kind, in full or installment basis, from the Filipinos in order to raise enough money to finance the administration of colony. It was considered as a form of recognition of the Filipinos' loyalty to the King of Spain. Encomienda refers to the land given by the King of Spain to the conquerors of unpacified lands in the Philippines as a form of favor. These conquerors turned into encomendero, who were given the right to collect tributes or taxes from the inhabitants of the encomienda. Polo y servicio, where Filipinos were forced to render their services, which include working on the construction of churches, roads, bridges, and ships, and planting and harvesting crops. And the Bandala system, in which Filipinos were also compelled to purchase expensive goods or products from the government. Aside from the structure of government and policies, social stratification was also changed. The Maharlikas, who were once at the top of the hierarchy, have to submit to the authority of Peninsulares, Insulares, and Mestizo. The rest of the Filipinos were called as Indio. They belonged to the lowest class and were usually given dehumanizing stereotypes. Peninsulares, the highest class, referred to the Spaniards who lived in the Philippines but was born in Spain. Insulares also referred to Spaniards but they were born in the Philippines. Mestizo was a class of people who share Spanish and Filipino blood. These classes enjoy more rights and privileges and command respect from the Principalia and Indios.